Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofits, where the nerdy passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact is celebrated. Together with your host, Jarrett Ransom, the inspiring stories and game-changing strategies of nonprofit leaders will be explored. Join us to unravel the mysteries of successful fundraising, uncover the secrets to effective advocacy, and nerd out over innovative approaches to solving social challenges. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense discussions with real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and discover or rediscover how to change the world together. Now let's dive in and embrace the power of our nerdy side.
Welcome back, my friends, or should I say my fellow nerds. I am so excited to share with you today's guest, which is Rene Lovecraft, which you will soon find out. Actually, you're going to find out right now. She is my virtual assistant. She is my go-to professional that helps me keep everything moving and grooving, including this podcast. So she shares a plethora of resources. I am so extremely grateful for her willingness to share so openly about how she manages not only herself, but so many other clients that she gets to be their virtual assistant for. So also shout out of immense gratitude to this season's sponsors. Thank you, Nonprofits HQ and Chasen and Company. Now sit back, relax, or keep walking, driving, whatever it is you're doing, and enjoy this conversation with Rene. Well, hey there. I am so glad to welcome you here. I'm thrilled to have you here as a guest. I'm turning the tables, Rene, because I'm going to out the fact that are actually my virtual assistant. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun to be editing these for the last 3 seasons and then get to be a guest on this season.
Yeah, well, you know the drill. You pretty much know how this goes, but I am so excited to pull back the curtains, or I should say, have you pull back the curtains and share more from your personal side, what that looks like. So I always like to start right out of the gate, asking the question, what are some of the names that you go by? I mean, obviously I just dropped Rene, but what are some of those names that people refer to you as?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am a wife and I'm a dog mom. As anyone who knows me, that's a big role for me. Obviously, I'm a virtual assistant. I am an operations manager. Last year, I was invited to be part or on the board for a nonprofit here in Phoenix. Shout out to Stage Left Productions. I also am a lighting designer. That's actually what I got my degree in. And I'm a big theater nerd. That's one of those ones that I reference myself as a lot.
Yes, I love that. And of course, nerds are my favorite kind of people. Yeah. Well, let's talk about those hats. I get to have amazing conversations with so many people like yourself and learn just how many hats we wear, because I'm sure I know a few of them, Rene, but just as you mentioned the names for yourself, and even some of those were new for me, what are some of these hats? Because I have a feeling I don't know what all's in that hat collection of yours.
Oh, yeah. Well, what's really funny, I was kind of thinking on this, getting prepped for our time together. And for a long time, I called myself a generalist because I want to know how to do everything, even if I'm not good at it, even if I have to send it to someone else to do it. And so, I mentioned virtual assistant, but there are so many things that fall under that. So that's, podcast producer, and that is social media manager, and that is graphic designer. And there's so many of these things that it's even hard for me to pinpoint until I'm like, oh, no, I know how to do that. Yeah, let me take care of that for you.
Yeah. I always thought of myself as a generalist, and really, I would change the jack of all trades to being the Jane of all trades.
Yes.
And I've got to say, you have mentioned, although maybe roundabout the operations, is that standard operating procedures and how you help people like myself really like lay that out. And that's a huge hat of yours, I can imagine.
Absolutely. That's actually something that I end up working with a lot of people who go, I don't know what I need, but I know I need help. And that's kind of one of my favorite places. That's one of my favorite hats to step in and put on is, okay, great. Well, what do you want the experience of your client or the end user to have? And then let's work backwards and make your standard operating procedures be perfect for you. And I know that have so much fun being able to take a step back at something that you've been like deep in for years and years and years and go, oh, well, if we just tweak this and we do that, it'll be perfect and you'll have less work to do. And I know with the amount of templates we've put together, the amount of, standard operating procedures that we've kind of built and tweaked over the years, that we get to then have so much more fun because we're not in the weeds thinking about these things all the time.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I could see it. Like I wear a lot of hats. You wear a lot of hats. You work with so many other, I'm assuming, equally busy people that are
Mhm.
also wearing a lot of hats. So how are you managing, or I should say handling, your hats, their hats, everything from that personal and professional commitment? Because even for myself, when I hit my limit, I know I've got a Renee, I've got you, right? I'm like, this is time for Renee. I'm now gonna, tag you into this project. You're tagged into a lot. So how do you handle all of the things and all of the hats and all of the commitments?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Sometimes I question how I'm able to do that myself. Mostly, I have some really amazing people that help support both my mental health and my physical health. And that really lets me use so much of my brain power on the things I enjoy, which is helping other people. And something that I've talked about before, especially with other clients, is this is my way to be able to help other people. And it's something that I feel like I am pretty naturally gifted at, and then got to go, oh, well, my husband's a stay-at-home husband, so there's all of these things that just I don't have to think about in my home and my day-to-day life, and that gives me so much more mental space to one, hold space for my clients. Something I like to say is I don't work with people that I wouldn't want to be personal friends with, and that makes a huge difference. I'm not logging on every day dreading having to talk to someone. I'm actually like excited I get to check in with them and, hey, what's new? What are we talking about today? How is your family? Things like that. And that makes it so much easier to be really tuned into the person I'm talking to and their business and how things in their personal life are going. And then I am hugely reliant on my own calendar and my own CRM to help manage my time and what I'm supposed to be focusing on. Um, Something that also is really big is I was diagnosed with ADHD just a couple of years ago, and being on medication for that was huge for not only me personally, but for my business, because now I feel like I have all of this focus that it was like, okay, well, good luck picking the thing I get to focus on today. And now instead it's like, oh, I have this, like, it's loaded. I can point it at exactly what I need to be focusing on. And that's huge. That makes it so much easier to kind of take all of these different things that, when someone's like, okay, this is a job for Renee, I need to loop her in on this, to go, okay, great. Well, looking at my calendar, I've got this little chunk of time that is now yours. It is. And I'll do that. I'll put that on my calendar as like, great, this is Jarrett's chunk of time. And this is what we're working on. And honestly trying to be really, really open about what I have the bandwidth for and what I don't. And if something needs to be moved, that's also a really big thing is I try not to keep things set in stone and be flexible but communicative about what needs to be flexible.
big word, communicative. If we're
Right.
back to Scrabble, I feel like I say this every now and then in the episodes, but it's like, if that was a Scrabble word, you just got tons of points. Well, I feel like you just got tons of points, truly, Renee, because you just downloaded so many great nuggets of information. And can I just give a shout out back to you because you stated you only work with clients that you would also consider essentially being friends with. What a privilege that is.
So agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it also made just a huge difference in my life overall, making the decision and then sticking to that. And I have been so privileged that clients like you also like shout out my name or go, you really need to meet Renee, because there are a couple of people where I'm like, anyone being referred to like me by Jarrett, or shout out Carrie Ann Munstead, who does the
Yep.
intro for this podcast. I know anyone coming from both of you is going to be just a true like delight to get to spend time with, because we're spending time, a lot of time together as we're working together.
We definitely are. And back to pulling back the curtains, right? Like when I started with you, and here I am, 16 years of business, and I haven't always, done business perfectly. And my standard operating procedures have not always been, just squeaky clean. And so for me, that comes from a place of vulnerability to say, like, okay, I'm going to show you what's working, and I'm going to show you the hot mess in some of these areas. Um, but I also love that you stated you have that support both, physically and mentally, and for being, willing to share so transparently about your own diagnoses, because I can imagine as a virtual assistant wearing all these hats, juggling all these different, balls, that had to be a bit of a challenge to begin with.
You know what's really funny is I found that being able to jump to different tasks, having so many different things on my plate, it was actually the first time I felt like I truly was good at my job. It's not just one thing every day. Like, I find, and I'm sure a lot of people with ADHD will say this, is it's so easy to get bored, and I am never bored in my job.
Yeah.
And I am so lucky for that. And while I'm so thankful for medication, because gosh, that made a huge difference, I was working in my business maybe 5 years before that happened. And being able to jump to other tasks when the attention span was waning, or I was starting to get bored, and go, okay, great, I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing something else productive. And then I'll come back to this and I'll have this renewed energy to finish what I said I would finish, what needs to be finished. And that's been a true blessing to be able to have the freedom to jump around like that.
I bet. I noticed for myself, I have always been someone that got bored easily. I like a good challenge. I like organizing chaos. I also like someone else to help me organize my chaos, right? So I would imagine a lot of this helps to manage your well-being. And something that you haven't mentioned, but I would love for you to mention is what about, some of those household chores, like, I don't know, groceries? What does that look like for you and your husband?
Yeah. We have spent the last couple of years, especially since COVID, focusing on how to make household chores as accessible as possible. So that's things like my husband and I use Discord to like message each other and to hang out with our friends and things like that. And so that's him taking pictures of things that need to go on the grocery list, and me going, okay, great, I'm going into the Walmart app and we're putting this and that and the other thing, and giving him the heads up when the groceries delivery is going to be there. And so I do a lot of the budgeting, the making sure the apps have all the things they need on them. And he's very much the, hey, this is what we're running out of, this is what we need, I've got my time all set up to put the things away. So we've done a really great job at kind of like separating what our strengths are when it comes to a lot of those household chores. Um, And then bless him, he hates when I'm like, hey, I've got the energy, I'm doing the dishes. And he's like, no, dishes are my job. Why are you touching my dishes? And
Oh
I'm
my
like, I'm
goodness.
helping. And he's like, you have worked all week. I'm like, yeah, well, so have you. He's on call, where I've got my very set, like I'm at my computer and when I'm off of it, I'm not working anymore.
Right.
He's very like on call all the time for the house. You can see the fur babies back here that he's, on call for all the time. And so that's one of those things where we have done this really great job of communicating who likes what chores don't take a ton of like mental energy for one person or the other, and then dividing and conquering and picking up slack when the other person has more energy. So that's a big one, especially since we get the depression season in this house where we really work together to be able to go, okay, who's got what covered and who needs to pick up slack, because we're a team, very much so.
I love that. And what I hear front and center is accountability for one another, right? Like really making sure that you are taking care of each other, holding the other person accountable to say like, hey, what do you need? What can I step in for? So talk to us a little bit about that self-care relaxation. Once you kind of hit that overwhelm or
Yeah.
you realize that's kind of what's happening in your household, what do you do personally, Renee, for that self-care relaxation when you're like, that's it, I've hit my limit?
Honestly, for me, I go back to the basics. Take a shower, brush your teeth, get a snack. Almost
Yeah.
across the board, that is almost always going to help me feel, I say, more like a person. Um, and then it's things like, I know my husband always needs sound. It's music or a TV show or something like that in the background. And I need quiet when I am overwhelmed. So the amount of times where I'm like, great, I have figured out that I am at that limit and I need some of that self care time. And a lot of times that is, I'm going to go lay down for 30 minutes and just be silent. And there's going to be no sound on. And that for me is so rejuvenating, especially because a lot of my job is to be talking with a ton of different people and kind of process through what their needs and wants and deadlines are. And so to just give myself that space to just be silent is really, really helpful for me when I do hit that overwhelmed stage.
That hits me to my core and makes me recall what I think is a funny story that just happened the other week. But my 14-year-old son, right? He likes noise. I do not. I'm like, stop any excessive anything. Um, and he could tell that my temper was very thin, running very thin. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to my room. Like, mommy's putting herself in her room, time out. I'm going to go to my room. I just need some time away because my temper is short and I don't want to say or do anything that I'll regret. 5 minutes later, he comes to my room, Renee, and he goes, Mom, can I just sit here if I promise to be quiet? I'll watch the movie with you, but I won't say anything. And I'm like, you better not open your mouth. Like, but I just adored that because I mean, that's accountability, mother, son, you get it, obviously, within your marriage as well. And I think that speaks volumes to have that sense of awareness and then that sense of like ability to, as you said earlier, to communicate that with the person you're sharing a home with.
I would also say the safety to feel comfortable that you can communicate that. And I would say for you and your son, the safety for him to be like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but I also want to spend time with you. Let's spend time in a way that you can right now.
Right, right. And I'm like, yes, you can sit here. I turned on a movie, but that's all we're doing. So
Yeah.
well, let's turn a little bit like what are some of the things you do for fun? So I love the back to basics, like take a shower, brush your teeth, get something to eat, self-care relaxation. What about fun? What does that look like for you?
I love playing Dungeons and Dragons. That's actually something Reg got me into. And so we've got a game every Saturday afternoon. And so that's something that we always like, we schedule travel around it. Like, we try and make sure that that is like sacred, fun
Cool.
time. And then my husband actually very much got me into playing video games. I have never really been a gamer. And when I tell you, I get so excited when we find something new to dive into, to the point where, we've found some games where they're just really like big story wise. And so it's something where we get done with work, we get done with all the chores, and it's time to just relax for the evening. And we're going to spend a couple hours playing this game for months. When I tell you, like, I know a lot of gamers out there will know, like, Baldur's Gate 3 came out last year ish. And we probably spent 4 or 5 nights a week playing that game for, it had to have been 3 or 4 months. It was
Yeah.
quite a while. And so that's my big, like, fun, we're gonna have a good time. And then I also like make it a priority to schedule time to hang out with my friends virtually for the most part, because my friends are in, Texas and Minnesota, and they're like kind of all over the place. And so that's one of those things, like tomorrow morning I've got friend time on my calendar for a good friend of mine, for us to just like hang out online for an hour, and get to gossip and chit chat and catch up and all the things. And that's one of those that I just really look forward to.
I love that. You mentioned earlier you'll even plan trips around like your gaming, your Dungeons and
Yeah.
Dragons. So when is your next vacation? Or maybe when was your last one? What does that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, last vacation was the beginning of September, so about 3 months ago. And we went up to Minnesota to go visit my sister. Her and her husband actually run this really cute resort in this little tiny town in Minnesota. And so we went up there for the better part of 5 days, and also timed it, excuse me, so that my uncle, aunt, and cousin, who I hadn't seen since pre-COVID. My aunt and cousin, I hadn't even gotten the chance to see since my grandmother had passed away in 2017. So this was huge to get to spend 5 days with them. And we went fishing, and we went and checked out Itasca State Park, which was stunning. I had never been before. And that was just an absolute blast. It was so relaxing. I don't think I opened my email the entire time I was there. So very lucky. And then our next vacation is actually going to be January, in about a month, a little under a month. And it is our 10-year wedding anniversary. So us and some of our best friends are going to New Orleans for a long weekend. And I literally just booked all of our fun things. We're doing, like a paddle boat brunch cruise, and a
So fun.
spooky cemetery tour, and all these kind of fun things. So we're going all out for the vacation this time.
Good for you. I love that. And congrats on the anniversary.
Thank
That's
you.
huge and definitely something to celebrate. Well, while people are listening to this, I know we're recording. When are we? What month are we in? We're in like mid-December. Right. And so everyone, including ourselves, we're really, getting through the Q4 of 2024, moving into Q1 of 2025. So what are, I don't know, some words of wisdom or some sage advice that you've been maybe resorting to yourself that you'd like to leave our listeners with today, as they too are probably wearing a lot of hats, juggling a lot of projects, maybe even, overwhelmed with the noise and the family time. Who knows? Is there anything you'd share with our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. Something that I've been trying to live by is that it is okay to prioritize yourself.
Yes.
I have a big history of being called selfish when it comes to prioritizing
Mm.
my well-being, and that was something I had to work really hard to like process through, like, thanks therapy for helping with that. And what I found is being able to practice prioritizing yourself so often leads to understanding your needs better and being able to show up in your life in a way that is so much more joyous than it would be otherwise. And I know, especially in the nonprofit space, we're in the nonprofit space because we love to help people, and you still have to prioritize yourself in order to be able to help other people.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but I always, for me, need the reminder as well that self-care is not selfish. The
Yes.
other one, right, is no is a complete sentence.
That was my word for 2024, was the word no.
Okay.
And so
Love it.
highly recommend, if you do a word of the year, try that at least once.
Yes.
So helpful.
Yeah, and it's a muscle. You can strengthen that muscle, but the more you say no, the easier it rolls off your tongue.
Well, and you're not rude, you're not being mean. You don't, no can be kind, no can be loving, no can still be generous.
Oh, such great advice. Well, Renee, um, I would love to share, although of course, it's a little, maybe this is selfish of me because I don't want your books to get so full, but of course I do think the world of you. Another shout out to Carrie Ann. So grateful that she connected me with you when I was looking for a virtual assistant. But where can people find out more about you and perhaps your services?
Yeah, I normally recommend people head to my website, which is lovecraftva.com. I'm not super active on social media, so you'll definitely find me there, but
Yeah.
good luck seeing me very often. And something that I always really like to shout out, even if I am not able to start working with someone because I am at capacity, I have so many connections to other virtual assistants, and reach out. I am happy to also send recommendations and introduce people. So don't hesitate if you're looking for someone, because I'll send you in some good directions.
Super generous of you. Yeah. Well, Renee, thank you. I know we could talk forever. I know our time when we meet, an hour goes by so quickly. So again, thank you for being willing and allowing me to turn the table, have you pull back the curtains and share a little bit more or a lot a bit more about your personal side. So thank you. I'm appreciative.
Thank you so much for having me. This was absolutely lovely. I really appreciate it.